Good evening, viewers. Welcome to our podcast, Bharat and Geopolitics. Today's topic is exploring the mind of India's adversaries, where we unravel the mysteries and motivation behind those who challenge us. I am your host here, Hari Prakash Sinha. I am thrilled to embark on this intellectual journey with you as we delve into the psyche of individuals and groups who pose challenge to India's interest. In a world shaped by complex geopolitical dynamics, understanding the perspectives and intentions of adversaries is paramount. Through insightful conversation, expert analysis, and in-depth research, this podcast aims to shed light on the factors driving adversarial behavior and the implications for India's security, diplomacy, and strategic interest. Join me as we peel back the layers of history, ideology, and geopolitics to gain a deeper understanding of the adversaries that shape India's strategic landscape. From neighboring region to global actors, we will explore the multifaceted dimensions of conflict, competition, and cooperation in the pursuit of national security and regional stability. Whether you are a scholar, a policymaker, or simply curious about the intricacy of international relations, this podcast invites you to expand your perspective and engage in thought-provoking discussions on the ever-evolving dynamics of global security. Join me in welcoming our distinguished speaker, Dr. Adityanjee. Dr. Adityanjee, it's a pleasure to have you on our podcast today. Your expertise and insight are invaluable, and we are excited to dive into our discussions together. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, and let's make this conversation memorable. So, welcome, Dr. Adityanjee. Welcome to our platform.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Sinha. As usual, I am very pleased to be on your platform to discuss issues of strategic concern.
So, we are moving to our fourth question. How do India's adversaries leverage asymmetric tactics such as cyber warfare, disinformation campaigns, and proxy warfare to challenge India's security interest and influence in the region? So, this is the question for you, sir. So, please comment.
So, we have defined our adversaries, and you raised the question of asymmetric tactics. Asymmetric tactics are utilized when your enemy is much stronger than you. Usually, you would not use asymmetric tactics with an enemy that is much weaker with you because you can just swat the enemy.
Right.
Having said that, some of the terms that you use that actually are not really part of asymmetric tactics. Cyber warfare these days, the mainstream part of mainstream warfare. It is not an asymmetric tactic. Superpowers engage this tactic against other nations, whether they are stronger than you or not. It is routinely used as non-kinetic warfare. Similarly, disinformation campaigns are used by various powers, not necessarily a weaker power. Disinformation campaign has been indulged by the Western civilization, Western alliance of nations against India for a long period of time. It's not that they are weaker than India. United States, Its allies are not weaker than India, they are much stronger, but they use disinformation campaigns. If I may give you an example, there is a disinformation campaign going on, orchestrated from the West on the CAA, Citizenship Amendment Act,
when they have nothing to do with this.
when they have nothing to do with it. So I told you that UK is an adversary, Canada is an adversary, so is United States. If they are not located in the region, but they are using disinformation tactic. So far in our discussions, we have used adversaries as only China and Pakistan. But here is a chance to broaden the discussion. They are also adversaries, although they are not in our near abroad.
Yeah.
Uh, Cyber warfare. You know that in around 2007, DRDO and ISRO did a missile test from an island in the Bay of Bengal, and test failed. It was part of the Agni series of missiles. At that time, nobody could say why the test failed. Later on, after 2, 3 years, it was found out that there was a malware, was a worm that was introduced, and the sources of that worm might have been the US or Israel. So it was an example of cyber warfare not done by enemy states. It may have been done just to test it. So point I'm making is that we have experienced cyber warfare from enemies or from countries that are not traditional enemies, but may have used that worm attack on Indian missile system. With US, we can understand why they did it, because they are trying to contain India's missile, ballistic missile capabilities.
Yeah.
One does not understand why a friendly country like China would do that, but they were actually perfecting that particular work. On the test that was done from Wheeler Island. So, cyber warfare, our regional adversaries are also using. You will see that once in a while, Pakistani hackers will, disable India's websites controlled by government of India.
Yeah. Earlier they were doing.
Yes, they were doing, they continue to do from time to time. I will mention China. There are instances when China made a cyber attack on All India Institute of Medical Sciences on their medical records and appointment system. And, the whole medical appointment system at All India Institute of Medical Sciences was disabled for a few days. They could not actually restart the work. Similarly, they attacked our grids in Mumbai, electric grid in Mumbai. So cyber warfare is a non-kinetic warfare that is utilized by adversaries or anyone, whether it is a nation or a non-state actor, as a low-cost intervention, low-cost tactic. It is not necessarily an asymmetric warfare done by an adversary that is weaker than you.
I see.
Disinformation warfare, I already told you about. Pakistan has indulged in disinformation warfare forever. On international fora, I talked to you about it. That whether it is OIC platform, whether it is United Nations General Assembly, whether that is UNHCR meetings, Pakistan has indulged in its anti-India rhetoric based on lies.
And what about the proxy wars?
Now, proxy wars, again, both these countries have indulged in.
Through
So have so
Muslim.
have Canada.
Yeah.
The proxy war by supporting Khalistani movement is not just confined to Pakistan or ISI. Khalistani movement was given support by Western countries, whether it is UK, whether it's Canada, and to a certain extent even United States. And that is happening even now. This
Yeah.
attempt to re-energize a defunct Khalistan movement in 21st century is a Western project. Is the Khalistan, or I should say, American Sikh citizens and Canadian Sikh citizens are orchestrating that. There's no nation called Khalistan at this point in time. So these are basically Sikh Americans and Sikh Canadians who are orchestrating with the help and support of those nations' intelligence agencies. It's a proxy war. Again,
Right.
what is the aim? Aim is to contain and disintegrate India. Aim is death by thousand cuts.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes you have a kind of alliance between Pakistan, Islamist forces, American Sikhs, Canadian Sikhs, UK-based Sikhs, and some misguided Sikh citizens of India. So China has supported proxy wars against India in Northeast. And again, the usual concept that asymmetric warfare is indulged by a weaker enemy against stronger enemy does not hold true. Any country, any power, any non-state actor can use some of these tactics, whether there is an asymmetric advantage or not. Issue is some of these are low cost tactics, easily employable. I'll give you example. Hamas used paragliders to
Yeah.
land into Israel on
Yeah.
October 7th, built up tunnels, you know, underneath to land their fighters into Israel. That is an example of asymmetric warfare. But in case of India, the asymmetric warfare is not only indulged by a weaker adversary or weaker enemy, which is Pakistan, but also by the Western powers and also by a neighborhood power like China, which is not weaker than India in any respect.
Yeah.
So cyber warfare is now routine part of warfare. Disinformation warfare, information warfare is part of Chinese, you know, core warfare, lawfare, information warfare, psychological warfare, and cyber warfare. So,
So, should we move to the next questions? I'll just tell you about the question.
mm,
Our next question is, what role do geopolitical alliances and partnership play in shaping the behavior and strategy of India's adversaries? How can India strengthen its own alliances and partnership to counterbalance adversarial influence? So I think we can cover this question in this session.
okay,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think making alliances with nations is a time-tested strategy,
Yeah,
and sometimes you have to do it, you know, to gain supremacy over an enemy that may be strong. And generally, the adage is that enemy of your enemy is your friend.
yeah,
So, since 1947, when Pakistan was created, Pakistan developed military alliances with Western world. Pakistan was a member of CENTO, which was uh, Central uh, Treaty Organization, and what is called used to be called SEATO, Southeast Asian Treaty Organization. These were two American supported military pacts. Uh, Other names for these were Baghdad Pact and Manila Pact. Pakistan was part of both the alliances. Pakistan was considered as a, you know, fountainhead of war against communism by the West. And they felt that it was a nation they could work with against India. So our political enemies, geopolitical enemies, did use alliances. Similarly, look at China. What China has done. China, as a communist country, initially was in alliance with Soviet Union, but they turned against them. China developed from 1960s onwards a relationship with Pakistan, developed an alliance with Pakistan. In 1961, Pakistan gave away a part of state of Jammu and Kashmir to China, Paksham Valley.
yeah,
That's part of India that because it was under adverse possession of Pakistan, Pakistan gave it to China as a peace offering to China and by Chinese loyalty. That led to development of this Karakoram highway.
they wanted a route for the Tibet.
Yes. So China also is developing alliances in India's neighborhood with countries like Sri Lanka, countries like Maldives. They've tried to have alliance with Bangladesh, not a formal alliance, but some sort of arrangement.
Yeah,
So all these countries are doing the same. India traditionally had taken the, you know, high moral ground that we will not develop military alliances with anyone. We will have some arrangements as part of the developing world. So we were part of the non-aligned movement, tried to obtain, you know, spearhead the leadership of non-aligned movement. We were part of any United Nations supported grouping, but we did not want to be part of military alliances. And after a while, we understood that probably that is a very lofty goal, it will not work. So
yeah,
we started to develop quasi military alliances. So in 1971, before the Bangladesh war, Mrs. Gandhi signed a treaty of mutual friendship and assistance with Soviet Union.
yeah.
And it did help us in war against Pakistan because when the Seventh Fleet Enterprise was sent by United States to send a warning to India in the Bay of Bengal, they could not move further because the Soviet submarine had already surfaced. A nuclear submarine had surfaced, and the United States knew that Soviet submarines are there in Bay of Bengal, and it will not be easy for the Seventh Fleet to quote unquote punish India for the 1971 Bangladesh war. Similarly, after the liberation of Bangladesh, India did have a mutual friendship and assistance treaty with Bangladesh for 25 years. But in more modern times, India's participation in quadrilateral security dialogue, although it's not a military alliance, but it is a security dialogue, is a step in that direction. Uh, Mind you, if you are weak, everybody will come at you. If you are
Yeah.
strong, nobody is going to touch you. So one way of, you know, avoiding conflict is to be strong yourself. Okay. If you are strong, people cannot harm you. But if you are weak, one way of getting some Dutch strength is by entering into alliance. So I will say something. There is the saying in Sanskrit, Ashwam Naiva, Gajam Naiva, Vyaghram Naiva, Naiva cha Ajaputram Valim Dadhatu, Devo Durbala Ghataka. So nobody actually sacrifices a horse or an elephant or a tiger. When it comes to making an effective sacrifice, Ajaputram, the son of the goat, the lamb, that is always sacrificed on the altars of Devas. So even the gods are the destroyers of people who are weak. That's the message. So you don't have to be a lamb. You have to be a tiger or a lion. There was a famous poet, national poet of India. His name was Ramdhari Singh Dinkar.
Yeah.
There are very famous lines that he said.
क्षमा सुहाती.
क्षमा शोभती उस भुजंग को जिसके पास गरल हो
Yes.
उसको क्या जो दंतहीन विषहीन विनीत सरल हो.
Yes.
So there's a message there. You can forgive people. You can be tolerant. You can show strategic patience only if you're strong. If you're yourself weak, your attitude of peaceful intentions and peaceful coexistence is just a farce.
Right.
So, in order to have peace, you have to be brave and strong. And that is what one would advise future administrations, future governments of India temporarily develop geopolitical alliances to protect and safeguard the national interests,
Yeah.
while at the same time we indulge in nation building, create our own military industrial complex, developed our armed forces and not just the land forces, but also our air force, our navy, our coast guards, our commandos, the Marcos, our cyber defense wings, and our space defense agency. Cannot leave any aspect of warfare at the mercy of your strategic adversary. We need to develop more minilaterals and plurilaterals to contain China. And we
Mm,
should not be relying just on United States.
right.
I think it will be in India's interest to develop a lateral or a quad, maybe initially trilateral, with countries like Japan and South Korea. So India, Japan, and South Korea could be a trilateral. Again, you know why we would develop that? Uh, Indian government currently may have some anathema to dealing on state-to-state basis with the nation of Taiwan, but I think we need to develop some sort of alliance.
Right.
China can build an alliance with Maldives and get a base there and buy an island of from Maldives. Why not us?
Yes.
So let's not neglect our relationship with Taiwan. We should be in the process of selling Tejas aircrafts, BrahMos missiles to Taiwan and make money that way. Taiwan is a foreign exchange surplus country.
I think our leaders are still hesitant actually on international affairs.
I think our political leadership historically has been very myopic. They don't have understanding, geopolitical understanding, and they were taken away by the facade of peaceful coexistence with the nations in the neighborhood. They were taken by the facade of non alignment. Uh, so, what has been the fallacy that pretty much every prime minister of India from 1947 onwards has been in the race, aspirational race to get a Nobel Peace Prize. And I think that's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
You have to indulge in what is called real politics
Yeah.
to safeguard the national interests. You
Yeah.
cannot be a lamb state, you cannot be a weak state at the mercy of others. And that is what actually uh, was preached to us by our own politicians, that you should not try to become strong. You should not try to develop the nation's armed force. You should not develop nuclear weapons. To the extent you should not develop, missiles capability. Uh, why do we need it? Why do we need a blue water navy? Why do we need armed forces? We just need a police force. We are a peace-abiding country. Nobody is going to attack us. Certainly, China will not attack us.
Mm.
In fact, we allowed asymmetries to develop over a period of time. China did its first ASAT test, anti-satellite kinetic kill test, in 2011. They were trying to do this from 2006 onwards, and there were three or four failed tests, and finally in 2011 they succeeded. And I wrote some articles at that point in time exhorting the government of India to do India's own ASAT tests. And in one of the meetings, actually, was a meeting organized by IDSA. I asked the National Security Advisor, who was Shiv Shankar Menon at that point in time, as to what Indian government was doing about developing India's own ASAT capability. And the guy refused to answer questions. My thesis was that you don't want to have the same story like nuclear asymmetry. When you
Yeah.
have a division on in nuclear halves, NPT5s and NPT other nations. And even if you did your test, you were still not part of the NPT5. So in the space, actually, as far as ASAT capabilities were concerned, although right now there's no this thing treaty, banning further ASAT tests, didn't want to be in a similar predicament as it was in case of nuclear weapons. And finally, after change of government in 2014, in 2018, Indian government decided to do an ASAT test.
Yeah.
Yes, it was subjected to critique by Western nations, but at least you develop the capability, of developing a kinetic kill vehicle for a moving satellite uh, in low Earth orbit. So sometimes there has to be a renaissance in strategic thinking of the ruling establishment. I think that same renaissance needs to be there in terms of acquiring military bases in near abroad. The same renaissance is required to develop a blue water navy that can do power projection. And yes, in that process, having geopolitical alliances would be important in both Asia, Southeast Asia, and in West Asia. Some of these geopolitical alliances can be need based. You don't have to necessarily join in structures and instruments that are created by United States, but you have to create your own mini alliances and trilaterals.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
gave you an example of an Indic civilizational based association, Dhanam, that I talked to you about.
Yes.
That's how you engage in cultural diplomacy, because any kind of diplomacy safeguards your national interests. It's not just military diplomacy.
Yeah, right, sir. So that was all the question I had for this session. So we are wrapping up here. We do have a couple of questions that will be taking in the next session, whenever you are free.
That would be my pleasure. As I said, I enjoy talking to you, and I like your penetrating questions. That gives me some time to elaborate on my own ideas, which in some way may help India, develop a posture for safeguarding national interests on long-term basis.
Yeah. Actually, the other topic that we discussed the other day, actually there were more questions, so I'll be sending you those questions also. I'll send you that list. So the
Okay,
video that I have published today, so there were more questions on that topic actually.
okay.
So thank you viewers. So this wraps up today's session. Thank you for joining us on this insightful journey. Remember to subscribe for the more enriching conversation. And until next time, stay curious, keep exploring. Please promote the video, share with your network. Thank you, Dr. Adityanjee. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. Always a pleasure. We'll be happy to come back again.